name. Hallelujah. Amen. So in this video, I just want to talk about the two main roles of a Christian. To preach the gospel. The gospel means good news. The gospel of Jesus Christ, the good news. And then the Bible instructs us, have nothing to do with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather expose them. Now, what's interesting is, we don't chase our tails in this. What I mean by that is, we don't all day long point out what's wrong. Because what that will do is promote bad. And that's exactly what the devil is about doing. So you're sort of doing the devil's work if you get caught up in a cycle of just saying how bad things are. You know what I mean? So don't do that. Don't get caught up in that merry-go-round. So what we do as Christians is we tell the truth on the issue, which is the fast track to exposing the corruption. And it is the truth that disposes of a lie. Not only exposes it, but disposes of it. It actually removes it. You see what I'm saying? So, because when you know the truth on something, there's any amount of lies can be told, but when you know the truth on a matter, you'll identify all the lies immediately. Because you know the truth. So telling the truth on the issue both exposes the corruption, disposes of the corruption, and protects you against deception. All manner of deception, even if it's refashioned. You know, they just tell a new lie to deceive you in a different way. If you know the truth on that matter, you're not going to be deceived. That's why the Bible is so important to read, because you'll know the truth. And then all of Satan's variations will immediately be exposed before your eyes. Just by way of knowing the truth. That's why there are so many bad news reporters in the world, and they can appear as having good intentions because they're exposing evil. But if that's all they're doing, they're actually promoting it. So as Christians, we don't promote evil. We do sometimes say exactly how the evil is occurring, but we don't only get locked into that cycle. Because if you do get locked into that cycle, now you're a promoter of evil. Now you're a promoter of wickedness. You see how it works? So that's exactly what Satan wants you doing, pointing to the bad news. Why? Well, it's the opposite of the first task a Christian has, the good news. So trickily, you could think you're doing good by exposing all this evil, but there's any amount of it. Do you see the point? There's any amount of it because you're living in evil days. So if you want to get into exposing evil, you'll be very busy. But you won't actually be doing what Jesus told you to do. And that's what they're good at. They're good at straw-manning you, which is like having a discussion that seems to be like the one you initiated but isn't. Or just having you sort of jogging alongside what you're supposed to be doing but not actually doing it. And that's the exact opposite of what you should be doing. Even though you seem to be right, very close to it, such that you would even think you're doing it. You're not. You're parallel to it, promoting evil. If that's all you're doing is exposing the evil itself, do you know what I'm saying? This is what they're doing wrong, and that's what they're doing wrong, and then they did this, it was terrible, it was awful. You see the point? Jesus said, be not in awe of them. Be not in awe of them. They'd have you in awe of their evil. They don't care what gets your attention so long as they get it. So do expose evil, absolutely, but end up by telling the truth that exposes the evil. Do you know what I mean? So go to the solution. You know, there are many people in the world who complain about the problem and not actually address what is the solution. And when you see those guys putting leaflets through your door, vote me, don't vote them. Even so, well, what happens when they're all singing from the same hymn sheet? Well, then you know that they're all not qualified for the job. So you need to start electing people who are qualified. Well, they don't. What if they don't actually run? What if they don't get to the point where anybody can run for office? Anybody. So what you have to do is you have to get guys who have identified the solution. Not guys who have identified the problem. Guys who have identified the solution we need in government. And what is the solution? It is simply conforming to the Constitution of Ireland. And that's what they're not doing. And they're trying to lead the public to ignore the Constitution, because the Constitution is the solution. Implementation of it, as we have told them to implement it, is the solution to the problems. Building of infrastructure, farms and houses, removal of unconstitutional legislature, removal of the term presumptively constitutional from our laws, removal of sections 115 and 117 of the Criminal Justice Act 2006. Removal of these things is the solution. Removal of any lie that in legislature that states the President doesn't have to check the constitutionality of legislature before it's implemented, or bills rather, before they're implemented into the legislature. As a prerequisite. It has always been that way. We didn't vote to change that. Who did? Who changed it? How dare they? Something so fundamental to the democracy not even being put past the people? That's treason. That's actually sedition. That's treason and sedition. Because if you overthrow the effectiveness of the government, you effectively overthrow the government. So that's what has happened in Ireland. So the solution is conform to the Constitution and remove legislatures which are stacked against it, which Satan's minions have brought in. While the wool was over your eyes, you were locked away in lockdown or something. And ever since the Constitution was written in, they've been attacking it. Since 1939. They've been amending it out of effectiveness, rendering it useless. So what we should do as the people of Ireland is hold the government accountable to the proper implementation of the Constitution, and that requires you reading it. You see the point? So effectively, failing to implement the Constitution as president is effectively attacking your own country and your own countrymen. Now, the infrastructure is very simple, farms and houses, but currently our government are paying taxpayers' dollars to farmers to not farm. So they're actually they're using our taxpayers' money to not build infrastructure. That's the opposite of what they're tasked with. So they're unqualified for the job. Therefore, they're disqualified from the job. If you're not qualified for the building of infrastructure, you're disqualified. If you don't identify the solution, you are the problem. If you don't identify the solution, you are the problem. Just like I've said previously, you can talk about the evils all day. Unless you come to the table with the solution, you're the problem. You're unqualified. Therefore, you're disqualified from the discussion. Satan doesn't mind you talking about bad news all day long. It's the solution he doesn't want you talking about. So he'll only let people put flyers through your door who are having the same old conversations. Cost of living crisis. There is no cost of living crisis. Why? Well, what does it take to build infrastructure? Sunlight, food, water, and men. Which one of those do we lack? Food. Why? We don't lack any of the other three. Why would you pay farmers not to farm? If you lose any of those four, you can't build infrastructure. Listen again. Food, light, sun, rain, and men. Why? The building of houses and farms require food, light, water, and men. Again, the building of farms and houses, that's basic infrastructure, requires food, water, light, and men. Which one do we lack? What do we lack? Why would we pay farmers not to farm? That is paying for the destruction of infrastructure. Paying for the destruction of infrastructure. Anybody who thinks that's a good idea is unqualified and therefore disqualified. So the solution is men. Why? Because we have the aforementioned. We have light and water. We have food currently. So we need men. Men who are qualified in construction and farming. Not farmers that will take bribes not to do their job and sit on their bum. Actual farmers. Not absentee landlords living in the farmhouse. Occupying the space so others can't use it. Actual farmers, not pretendy guys. Real ones. So that requires an initiative for training construction workers and farmers. If you do that, your unemployment line shrinks to almost nothing. Your country prospers. No lack of housing, no lack of self-sufficiency, because you've got ample farming. Because of all the competition, you drive the prices down, but you also have to pay them enough that they can make a living. They don't need to be millionaires. They just need to make a living and be able to provide for other people's food needs. And the more farms you have, the more prosperity you have. Then you might even start trading with other nations. But you have to have the majority of your food needs met. Then you could even become charitable and ship food overseas to the hungry places. And then you might even be qualified to go visit those places and help them establish their farms, because you're qualified. Then when you have ample infrastructure in the form of housing, you can open your door to other people in other nations. But they must learn how to work, how to farm, and how to build as well. And that's how you prosper. Because you're able to take care of your basic needs. And then gainful employment is not a problem. Cost of living crisis is a nonsense. The cost of living has never changed. What is it? Light, food, water, and men. What's the crisis? The crisis is the government are paying the farmers not to farm. That's the crisis. It's a man-made crisis by this government. What government thinks the solution for a lack of infrastructure is paying those who are currently in the building of infrastructure not to do their job? That's mad. That's actually criminal. You're getting paid to build infrastructure and you're taking the taxpayers' money and giving it to the farmers not to farm? That's criminal. That's actually larceny and fraud. It's grand larceny and fraud. It's actually sabotage as well. It's treason, it's sedition, it's sabotage and grand larceny. They should not be paying farmers not to farm. That's grand larceny. So they're unqualified, they're disqualified. We need a general election and they should be counting themselves blessed if they stay out of prison. The building of infrastructure has to happen. In Jesus. Blessings.